When I was 7 in 2008, my mother gave me a PlayStation 1 copy of Resident Evil 2. At that point in my life, I didn't really understand what a game was. I was spoiled with toys and games and I couldn't distinguish the two. I thought maybe a CD was really just a thin action figure. I'm saying this now, and I know this sounds bad, but really, I was just a dumb child. I would take the Claire disc out of the disc tray and I would play it like it were a Barbie doll. Give it baths, play cops and robbers with it, with my other action figures. And then one day I grew up. 10 years old is when I first played this game. Almost 3 years after receiving it as a gift. To my surprise, it booted up onto my used and worn slim PlayStation 2. It took a little bit to run. The CD wasn't exactly kept in pristine condition for all these years, but it worked. It's at this point that you'd expect me to say how wowed and amazed I was playing this game. After all, it's in the title. I love this game. I love everything about it. But no, 10-year-old me couldn't get past the first area of the game. No, not the police station. I'm talking about the actual first area, Raccoon City. It enraged me that I couldn't get past the first level, so I took the game and I put it away until I turned 12, 2013. 5 years after receiving this game, I finally set myself down, took out my old PlayStation 2 console, and started playing some old video games. I had the first 3 Tomb Raiders, though at this age I still wasn't very good at the few. Hell, not even all that good at them now. I played Tony Hawk Pro Skater and was reminded by just how many times I must have abused it as a child when it refused to load. My PlayStation 2 giving me that creepy loading screen, you know, the one. Then I found my copy of Resident Evil 2. Well, one copy. At some point I must have lost disc 1, the one that lets you play the Leon scenarios, because all I had was the Claire disc. On top of it was that iconic grayscale image of Claire's 3D model, contrasting the blood red background. I decided I wanted to give this game another go. At this point in my life I wasn't allowed to use YouTube, so the only thing I had to go on was the back of the CD case, the few minutes I played the game, and the booklet that it came with. Faded with time, but still eligible. I took the Claire's disc out of its casing, popped open my PlayStation 2 CD reader, and clicked in the CD. This is the exact moment when I fell in love with Resident Evil 2.
Don't shoot! Get down!
When I first heard of the remake for this game, I think I, much like everyone, was both pretty excited and really worried. How would they change the game from the original? Would they keep the same controls and cameras? Who's going to voice act the main characters? How are the A and B scenarios going to work? Those were a few questions going around in everyone's head when it was announced. Not to mention the countless others that honestly would take up way too much time in the video than it already has. But I won't waste my time with them, because when this game came out on June 25th, 2009, I was blown away. All of these potential issues didn't matter. I loved almost every second of it. It mixed in a good bit of nostalgia from the original, as well as establishing itself as a unique and well-rounded experience. They made sure to make the police station, one of the most iconic areas in the original game, feel like how it does in the original. There's major differences, like how instead of needing to drop down a ladder to get to the second floor from the main hall in the original, to the second floor being accessible off the bat. The safe room on the second floor in the waiting room has now been removed and is replaced by the one inside the main hall. The West Wing corridor has now been effectively cut off, forcing the player to use the operations room shortcut leading into the West office, as opposed to the original straight shot from West Wing to the stairway room into the evidence room, which then gives you the ability to head into the West office. The changes to the layout of the area not only make more sense, but also feels more effective in making the police station feel like one big maze, which is what I feel that we're trying to go with in the original. The main hall having a staircase leading to the second floor not only makes more sense than an emergency escape ladder, but it also helps the player out in the second biggest change in the remake. That is such a big change from the original that I feel it effectively makes this game as good as it is. Mr. X. Mr. X is the codename for a tyrant sent out by Umbrella to effectively kill the survivors witnessing the outbreak. At least that's what I'm led to believe. I may love this game, but I would be lying if I said I didn't skim through the majority of the documents found in this one. Mr. X only shows up in the B route of the original Resident Evil 2, which, if you remember, I never had the chance to play. This made the inclusion of Mr. X all the more surprising. Of course, I knew of Mr. X, but I also knew that he never appeared in the A routes of this game. The inclusion of Mr. X appearing in all versions of the remake, Claire A, Leon B, or Leon A, Claire B, not only tells the player that Mr. X is a bigger threat than they were in the original, but that he's also supposed to be feared by the player. Mr. X in the remake will legitimately hunt you down all throughout the entire police department, making almost all areas a red spot for danger. This makes the second quarter of the remake effectively a stressful game of cat and mouse, and I love this. This change in making Mr. X an even bigger foe than he was in the original makes the game for me. It puts the remake from an 8 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10, forcing the players to memorize the layout of the police station so as not to accidentally run into Mr. X, all while having to juggle with solving an assortment of puzzles, exploring the last few locked rooms of the police station, and having to deal with the new enemy placements makes for one of the best gaming experiences I have ever had the fortune of playing through in quite a while. It's just a shame that the game drops Mr. X just as quickly as he appears. You see, after the second quarter of the game, you head down towards the sewers of Raccoon City, making your way to the Umbrella Secret Labs facility located deep below the city. If you play as Claire, the last time you encounter Mr. X is when you get into the basement area of the orphanage Sherry is located in. This doesn't really count though, as it's basically a playable cutscene. What I mean by this is that all you have to do is run down the only path that doesn't lead to the Tyrant. This 30 to 35 second encounter with the Tyrant is cut short, literally, as you make your way into an elevator where a short cutscene plays in which we, the player, witness this amazing feature of the game get cut in half by G. Birkin. After this cutscene, you don't encounter Mr. X at all in any of Claire's routes. You'd think then that I'd be pleasantly surprised in finding that Mr. X appears far more in Leon's route than in Claire's. Sadly, that too falls short of my expectations. The biggest part he has in the last half of Leon's route is appearing very briefly in the lab section of the game, where you can effectively ignore him as you make your way towards the G-Virus sample after receiving the final upgrade to your clearance badge. This route to the sample is a clean cut, from A to B. There's no reason Mr. X would ever pose a threat to the player here. He's just too easy to ignore. The only other time he appears is in the end of the game, in which he once again briefly chases after Leon, before mutating into either the final boss of Leon's A route or the second final boss in Leon's B route. I know that it wouldn't make sense that Mr. X would be following the player throughout the entirety of the game. That's just not reasonable, especially during the sewer section. But it also just doesn't seem right that he doesn't appear earlier in the laboratory location, especially in Leon's route. Why couldn't the player have run into him sooner when searching for the final upgrade for the wristband? Let's say, as soon as you're done with the puzzle inside the drug testing lab, Mr. X bursts inside the room in a similar fashion to how he would through the giant window inside the greenhouse. The player gets a much smaller, but much hastier version of the chase sequence with Mr. X, like how they would in the police station. Hell, some of the rooms don't even need to be reworked. There's plenty of rooms in which you can outmaneuver Mr. X. It almost feels like this was meant to be the case, but for some reason was decided against. I'm not saying that this solution is a good one, but with how Mr. X appears so little in the last half of the game, it's a shame they couldn't at least squeeze a bit more. You're probably wondering, Fox, if you really do love this game as much as you do, why are you being so critical of something many other players might not see as an issue? It's because I myself didn't see this as an issue the first few times I played it. As I got better and faster with the game, I began to realize how short of his appearance he truly has. You can be done with the second run through the PlayStation in 30 minutes, even less if you know where you're going. This may not be an issue for players who haven't replayed the game over and over like I have, but that doesn't mean the issue isn't a valid one, it's just not as noticeable. That does not take away from how effective this game was at making me want to replay it, though. The A and B routes were, back then, and still are, a great way for replayability. In order to play through the game in its entirety, seeing the whole story and the non-canon scenarios, the player is going to have to go through the game a total of 4 times. 2 times as Claire, 2 times as Leon. This sounds great on paper, but ultimately falls short due to the lack of any real substantial change. No, I don't count having a new weapon as substantial change in either routes. The original Claire A, Leon B were drastically different to Leon A, Claire B. In order to not make this video longer than it needs to be, the main differences are who gets to the police station first, how Sherry is cured of her infection, how Annette Birkins and Ada Wong dies, whether Annette says goodbye to Sherry in person or not, and who kills Mr. G in Stage 5. The remake's Claire A and Leon B is very similar to Leon B and Claire A. The only differences between the two that I could get from playing the game for more than 60 hours is who gets to the station first, who speaks to Marvin, and who kills Stage 5G. In the remake, Sherry is always cured by Claire, Leon always sees Ada fall to her death, and Mr. X is always killed by Leon. An unimportant but still meaningful one is that Annette shoots Ada and succumbs to her wounds just outside the west area, and reconciles with her daughter. Though I'm willing for this to slide because both routes need to have Annette to do these things in order for the story to continue. That's just besides the point. The point I'm trying to show is, despite the remake following A and B routes like the original did, it loses its replayability, mostly because Claire A and Leon B is effectively the same game as Leon A, Claire B, just with minor differences, as opposed to the original's massive. The story stays relatively the same, the outcome is completely the same. No unique ending, no achievement for playing Leon A, Claire B route. It almost feels unnecessary, like it was added in because the original had it. This is something I can look past though, because I personally don't care about the simulators in these routes. Once again, I never played the Leon routes back then, and because of that I don't feel it was as much of a big deal as I'm making it out to be right now. But I know there are going to be some players who were originally drawn to this game because of the potential of having two different ways you can play through it, to then be let down as a player through the routes that they decided not to pick first, only to see all the same story points, all of the same character decisions, all of the same cutscenes save for a few minor ones at the beginning and one important one at the end, and nothing that really differentiates itself from the first playthrough. But like I said, I personally don't care about this issue. I can look past all these and still see how much time and effort the team put into this game, knowing how much scrutiny they're going to be held under. The original gained an almost a cult-like following after it came out. So many people, myself included, saw the original as one of the best, if not the best in the series. The way they somehow replicated the feelings I had when first playing this game, the way they changed so many things like the layout of the police station, and the way some enemies react for the better. The way the story makes more sense than it did then, even if you still get the feeling of campy horror Resident Evil was known for in the original trilogy. This all culminates in one of the best gaming experiences I have ever had the chance to play. And will continue to play. Hi, sorry for the long wait, between videos. I'm actually in between projects right now. This one was kind of a surprise for me, as I'm making a much longer video. This is just to, I guess, satiate the thirst that people may be getting not seeing any videos from me. I just wanted to say how absolutely surprised I was in hearing from this remake. I actually heard that it was coming out one day before it actually came out. So I almost immediately pre-ordered it, of course, and I got the fancy DLC, which not worth it, but I just had to. I had to do it because this game, it means so much for me, a lot more than other games have. It's not like Night in the Woods where the story and the characters are important and they make me feel emotionally for them. This is more of just a nostalgic grab that winds up working in favor for both the player and also for the creators, because this may be a nostalgic grab, but this nostalgic grab was good, and I think that's important. I think that some remakes deserve our attention more than others, and this one definitely deserved all of our attention, and it still deserves our attention. I hope that this doesn't make Capcom go down the remake route in which they tend to do. They've already remade Resident Evil 1 a total of 3 times already, so I genuinely do hope that Resident Evil 3 is the last one that they're going to remake for the time being, because I know that they're going to want to remake Resident Evil 4. It's inevitable. It was probably one of their best-selling Resident Evil games to date. But that's just my 2 cents. I just wanted to give a thank you to everyone who waited as long as they did. I did not expect to I did not expect for the video that I'm making right now to take this long. But it should be out within a few months. I'm not giving it a date because it's a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. I'm still talking to people about the subject matter, which is going to be pretty, I guess, personal. Not to me, but to people. I guess to me, more so than just the subject matter is going to be personal to some people because it hits home, especially with what I'm talking about. Although the video title isn't exactly going to show that, I am going to be talking about personal issues with people and letting go. So just look forward for more news on that coming soon. I just wanted to make a quick video on my thoughts and opinions on Resident Evil 2 Remake. Just because I had so much and I just had to say something. This is one of the best games that I've played, and it's only been 2 months for this year, so I'm pretty fucking excited for what 2019 has in store, especially considering Capcom has already said that they're thinking of remaking Resident Evil 3 Remake. So if that does ever come out, well, let's face it, when that does come out, you'll expect a video from me. Alright, thank you for watching this, and I hope it wasn't, I hope it was what you waited for, even if it's not the one that I am making in the current moment. It was just a little side mission of mine. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, I'll see you in a few other months.